And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at the new expansion for Seasons, and that is Seasons Enchanted Kingdoms. Now this is not going to be a review of the gameplay of the base game. You'll have to check that out elsewhere, and I'll have a note about that at the beginning of the review. But real quick, we're going to take a look at what comes inside of this box and how it might change the gameplay of the base game. And then we'll come back here and we'll get my final opinions on Seasons Enchanted Kingdoms. So here you can see the components for Seasons Enchanted Kingdoms. Now this is not going to cover the base game, so if you're looking to see a review of the base game of Seasons or the gameplay, you want to check out my video of Seasons, and you can find that either on the Dice Tower or by Googling Seasons Ryan Metzler, and that video will pop up. But this is just going to cover the new components, and those of you who know how to play will of course be able to extrapolate what these components mean to that game. So the first thing you're going to get is 40 new power cards. These are of course the cards you draft and use in order to gain points throughout the game in various different ways. Now, although there are 40 cards, many of them are duplicates, so you're not going to get 40 new unique cards, but you get a good amount of new cards to use in the game, especially when you combine them with the others and see the interactions that are possible. So we'll cover a few of these right now. You'll see we have Raven the Usurper here. He is worth 2 victory points, and he costs 1 fire element to bring in. And when he's in, he basically copies somebody else's magic item, and that's what these tokens are for right here. You put this on a magic item that's in play, and he gains all abilities of that magic item. He also only stays in play as long as the magic item that he's copying is also in play. If that card goes away, so does this card. So he can be destroyed by getting rid of your own magic item if somebody else is copying it. We also have something cool in the Fairy Monolith. This one here is a 6 victory point one, costs 2 earth energy, and when you bring it into play, at the end of every turn, you can tap this card or use the ability of this card. I guess you don't tap it, but you can use the ability of the card, the innate ability, to add one of your elements from your reserve onto this card. And then at any time you want on your turn, you can actually activate the card by, of course, turning it sideways to bring all or any of the elements on this card back to your reserve. So it basically extends your reserve. They don't count as part of your reserve, but they're set to the side and give you more space in your reserve to deal with elements that you may pick up throughout the game. And then you can bring back the other ones you need at any time you need them on your turn. We also have something here, the Shield of Zero. This is basically a card that allows you to protect your other cards for one of the air elements. You bring it out, and when you are forced to discard or destroy another card, you can instead discard or destroy this one. And if you do so, it gives you 10 crystals, which is 10 points in the game. And we have the Throne of Renewal, which I think may potentially be one of the strongest cards I've seen. Costs a water and 2 fire, and you can discard a power card and draw a power card when you play it. It's worth 10 points, but in addition to all of that, you get to move your Sorcerer token that is on the bonus track, the one that allows you to lose points in order to gain special abilities throughout the game, backwards 1 space. So when you play this card to the table, you actually get to move that back, basically giving you some points back. And then finally, we have something interesting in the Steadfast Die here. This is a card that when it's played to the table allows you to choose the result of your die. Not necessarily the side, but allows you to choose to either take a transmutation, or to take an increase of summoning power, or to take any element you want. So this allows you a result, but it's not necessarily the best result, but it's of course the one that you may need at that time. So that's a sampling of the new power cards. In addition to those power cards, we have 10 what they call Enchantment Cards here, and these are things that kind of change the setup of the game or a specific rule throughout the game. So there are 10 of these, 3 of which affect the draft, and those are 1, 2, and 3. So this one here, you'll choose one of these per game, and you'll see this one here says that instead of the normal amount of cards, with being 9, you'd instead draft from 12, and you put 4 per of the 3 years that you're going to play. So you'll get 1 extra card each year that you play the game. The second one here says that you get 18 cards, and instead of drafting, you simply get 18 and choose 9. So there's no more draft. Or we have a third one where you get 11 and you discard 1, then you draft from 10, and then at the end you discard another one. Some of these will affect in-game play. So this one gives you 1 extra crystal anytime you transmute throughout the game. Whereas this one says you can play a maximum of 1 summoning card per turn. Or you have here one that says that anytime you play a summoning card that has a cost here, it always costs 1 more. So whenever you play a card, it costs an extra element to play it to the table. Or there's one that gives you a 4th bonus action, that is draw a card, and you can lose up to 20 points. So you'll see that these change the rules of the game in various different ways, some of them good, some of them bad, and of course it's going to change the dynamic of how the game plays. On top of that, at the beginning of the game, you can use these special abilities, and there are several of these tokens, but everybody gets dealt 3. and you can choose one of them to keep throughout the game. And these all have a different ability on them. So for example, this one here is +1 every time you transmute. Or we have one here that says you may look at the hands of any other players in the game, and if you do so at the end of the game, you get 9 points. I don't know why that's worth 9 points, but it is. This one here is discard 4 water tokens to get 18 points. Or we have, you can take 2 elements at any time you want, once per game, but you lose 5 points at the end of the game. So these special abilities will modify various things that you can do throughout the game, maybe give you a benefit, but at the cost of a victory point loss, or they may give you some type of bad thing, but give you victory points at the end of the game. In addition to all of that, you have these 2 little Bespelled Grimoire things here that are for cards from the previous game. These are going to allow you to extend your reserve. If anybody remembers, the Bespelled Grimoire gives you 3 extra spots in your reserve, making it up to 10. These allow you to store those tokens, indicating that they are part of your reserve, as opposed to other cards which are separate from your reserve. Finally, we have 2 other types of tokens. We have a first player token, just to keep track of the first player, and we have these depleted energy reserve tokens. New cards in the game will force you to reduce the amount of tokens you can keep in your reserve, and these tokens here are to place in your reserve to show that you may not fill that spot with an energy token. So throughout the game, you may lose the ability to store tokens. You'll place these in your energy reserve, and they'll take up a spot. The game ends in the same way. It plays through 3 different years with you playing your cards, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most points is the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Seasons Enchanted Kingdoms. It's about time, I think, for an expansion for Seasons. The game was released at Gen Con last year, kind of. I mean, they didn't have many copies, but shortly after Gen Con, it kind of got out there. And since then, I've played with the power cards a lot, and I've seen the power cards. I know the power cards. They're not too exciting anymore. But adding some new power cards in not only adds, of course, new cards, but also new interactions and interesting ways to make those cards work together. And I think that by adding in those 40 new power cards, even with the duplicates, you get a lot of new play out of it, and it seems fresh to me. I really like that they added that in. Of course, it was expected that they would. Some of the cards, of course, are more powerful than others. Some of the cards are not that great. The ability, oh, I can save one of my cards. That's good. I like it. It's cool. It's very cheap. It's not exciting, but, it works. And it's definitely useful throughout the game. Whereas things like I can set aside a token every turn and bring them back whenever I want, that's a great card. And I thought it was going to be broken, but it really didn't turn out to be. I actually don't think I've won any games using it yet. So that's not as powerful as I thought it was going to be. The addition of the enchantment cards. The drafting variants don't really change things too much. Of course, it changes the start of the game and how you build your hand. And of course, taking from 18 and building with 9 is going to be more like a constructed format in Magic than it is a drafting format like the other ones are, where you perhaps take 12 and make 3 different piles of 4 instead of 3 different piles of 3. The other cards kind of drastically change the rules sometimes. Only being able to play 1 season card a turn is a drastic change to the rules. Only 1 power card really limits you to what you can do. It's going to make collecting more cards not nearly as good, but if you can find a way to play them, either through placing them outside of the normal play effects by placing them on the table or other ways, that's going to be a huge benefit to you and can definitely be abused if you figure it out properly. The abilities are the same way, like the enchantment cards. Some of them are good, some of them aren't so good. I don't even understand the benefit to some of them, like looking at another player's hand and getting 9 points for doing so. I'm not sure why you get 9 points simply for looking at someone else's hand, but hey, if that's the ability you're dealt and the ability you choose, you're not getting anything special out of that, but you do get 9 points at the end of the game, so maybe they balance out that way. All in all, I think this is a great expansion to Seasons. I really enjoy it. I'm happy to have it. I think that, it's not necessarily balanced, but throughout the way that the game works, with the drafting and not being able to choose cards or passing cards off to other players, it will balance itself out internally. So through all of that, I definitely suggest checking out Seasons Enchanted Kingdoms. I think it's a great new expansion and one that adds greatly to the base game.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.